Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and we got even more content as part of the patch 11.15 update on the horizon, actually launching in a handful of days. I know that Horrific Visions only recently launched, and players are finally getting a chance to dive into 8 mask runs and getting some of the more difficult versions of Visions out of the way, collecting so many new mounts and transbugs from the vendors, but we got even more content and gearing opportunities right around the corner with Dastardly Duos, an event that is going to be short-lived, only 6 weeks, but offering players a bunch of rewards to obtain, from mounts, toys, cosmetics, but also an opportunity to gear some of your ults and earn a lot of score. I like most of the content that we've gotten recently, which gives you some sort of a power progression or gear or something for you to be able to make gains when it comes to endgame content. This one is going to be quite different, as it allows you to compete not only for gear but also high score in a boss rush mode where you get to do overlapping bosses, multiple bosses at a time. In fact, some of the familiar faces from previous dungeons that on their own are not that scary, but when combined together, when you're encountering them at the same time, that's where the challenge can really spike up. So I wanted to go over everything we know so far regarding Dastardly Duos, which is launching very, very soon. As always, if you guys want to see more regular updates for the War Within expansion, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. Now, I think a lot of players actually forgot that Dastardly Duos is going to be part of the patch 11.15 update. I really hate how they broke apart this patch piecemeal with a Nightfall scenario, then Visions, which are actually really fun, and then Dastardly Duos, which are actually quite a decent bit of fun over on the PTR, and it just feels so weird to have this content be so delayed, but it's actually coming out this next reset. Tuesday for NA, Wednesday for EU, or by the time you're watching this video, in just a handful of days. Dastardly Duos is a completely new type of an event. It's similar to that of like a 5-man dungeon, but it's more of like a scenario event style of content more than a proper dungeon. Very similar to a dungeon though, at the very beginning you will be walking into this ring where you will be pulling trash mobs and then destroying the environment and eventually fighting multiple bosses, so it's kind of similar to a dungeon in that way, but the purpose of it is completely different. A lot of players were confused by the name of Dastardly Duo, like are you going to be queuing this content with the duo, with another player? But no, not really. The content itself is 5-man instance content that you can do as a solo player or with a group of friends, but the duos comes from the fact that you'll be fighting multiple bosses in this new boss rush mode, and that's essentially the draw of this mode specifically. So if you play things like the Brawlers Guild, for instance, way back in the day, or in previous expansions potentially, it's kind of similar to that, but not on the same level. You will be fighting multiple bosses with overlapping mechanics, and there's a variety of older bosses from older dungeons that will be making their way into this content, and that overlap of their mechanics is what's really going to add a little bit of extra interest, but also difficulty to this content. Some of the dungeon bosses they mentioned previously were bosses like Brogok, which doesn't really have too many mechanics in TBC, but he does create this pool of green, I guess sludge or smoke that expands over time, so you have to be very careful with your positioning, and by himself the boss isn't really all that difficult, but where it becomes interesting is in some of the overlapping mechanics of these bosses. Another boss that will make an appearance is Chronoloord Epoch from the Culling of Stratholme dungeon. And while I'm not 100% familiar with this guy, it's been a while since I've done that instance, it does seem like he'll have a bunch of curses and abilities that'll be very timey-wimey, reducing enemies, or I guess your attack speed and casting speeds, while also doing tank buster abilities like Wounding Strike. From the Dead Mines, not the original, but the revamped version for Cataclysm, Glove Talk is also going to be making an appearance, and from the footage we've seen, it looks like some of the mechanics are actually going to be changed up a little bit. So when you get super low, he does Arcane Power, which just shoots out swirlies all over the place. It looks like they're changing that to be just a beam that spins around in circles. So I imagine this boss overlapping with some of the other ones could potentially be really rough. Bosses from the revamped Shadowfang Keep, I don't really remember which one of those are going to be here. Maybe Lord Walden, Baron Silverlane, maybe Ashbury, Godfrey. I know one of these guys is going to be making appearances, but these bosses together with some of the other bosses in the mix, when you stack them all together, there could be a bunch of different mechanics that by themselves are not that difficult, but when you have multiple bosses engaged with you at the same time, those overlaps is where things get a little bit more interesting. And not only are you just fighting bosses within this instance, but you're really trying to race against time, against health bars, but also against a high score. And you're trying to use the environment to your advantage, positioning certain tools and items within the ring as well as vehicles, while trying to increase your score to be as high as possible. Sometimes you're even using bonus items to summon additional bosses and enemy reinforcements in order to pad out that score as best as you can. So it's a bit of an opportunity for just fun, arcadey, very much arcadey, zany type of an experience, but also an opportunity for some actual, possibly, challenge mode content as well. It's really difficult to tell just how challenging this content is, as by PTR testing, we had very limited interaction with this content. Like, we didn't really get to do too many bosses, but at some point with this event, you'll be able to fight 10 bosses at once towards the tail end of the weeks of this event, which should add an additional challenge, but also an opportunity for you to earn a ton of score as well. Now, the location for this event will actually be made available in Orgrimmar, Stormwind, and Donegal. There'll be an encampment for the Dastardly duos with a bunch of vendors, and this way you get your main quests. And they also have a stage where, as you do the content, you'll actually be able to earn points within this system. And then when you stand on the stage, it'll actually rank players, putting the person with the highest points at the #1 spot, which is kind of neat. I think players way back in Shadowlands, for content like Torghast specifically, there was a bit of the scoring system of sorts back then, and many players really wondered if Blizzard would eventually maybe add some kind of like a scoreboard, so that, let's say you're doing a Torghast run, you get yourself a really insane run with a ton of points, and maybe you're just a really fast run, speed running it with the best powers. It would be kind of cool, like, to be able to compare your run against other players' run within this mode. And it looks like they're taking some of those keys from what players wanted back in Shadowlands and are trying to find a way to incorporate that to some degree for Dastardly duos, so you can really kind of compete against other players on score alone with every single one of your runs. Now, the main draw of this content, especially if somebody who's going to be more casual at it, is the quest chain. Every single week, there's going to be a new quest for you to take from the Dastardly duos, and all you have to do is just do a Dastardly duos run, defeat the bosses, collect the loot, and then get yourself an item in that quest. Every single week, quest items are going to offer you different rewards, one of the best ones being Tyrannosaur, which I think is offered either during week 6 or week 5 of this event. But it's yet another turtle mount that you can easily add to your collection, and there'll be a variety of other rewards there as well that are going to be a little bit more unique. We have pets, toys, cosmetic things like gear that you can earn from the event, but also a handful of vendors as well. To add to the arcadey nature of this event, by the way, they also have a preparation stage with a bunch of consumables, so they're trying to go for a little bit more variety of consumables to help make your runs in those duos easier or potentially more challenging. Like, if you just want to have the easiest run, you can take the food that increases your damage and makes you super tanky, or you can just take the foods that actually make your character weaker, but you'll be able to earn more points in the run for those of you that are looking for a really difficult challenge within Dastardly duos. You also can get potions that can either grant you more healing, movement speed, or even grant you invisibility, so it looks like you can do a bit of a loadout for every single run of this, which adds to that arcadey nature of the Dastardly duos event. Technically, this content is designed for groups of players, whether you want to run it with a friend or a couple, but even if you don't have a 5-man team, you'll be able to fill up all of those other important spots like tanks, healers, DPS, whatever you need, with followers within dungeons. Dungeon followers will make a return for this content, so even if you're a solo player that wants to give this a go, maybe even try some challenge runs, these followers will join you to fill out all those other important roles to make your runs just a little bit easier, which should hopefully make this content a little bit more accessible, whether you have a bunch of friends that you want to run this with, or if you just want to run it all on your own. Dastardly Duos also is another new opportunity for you to gear out your character. Patch 11.15 has been filled with a bunch of catch-up bonuses, and this one is no different. Over the 6 weeks that the event will be active, this is yet another opportunity for you all specifically to be able to earn a bunch of champion track gear, as every single quest you complete will give you champion track items, which could also be a decent bit of transmog, but also that's just a gear upgrade for your character in general. And I believe on PTR, though don't quote me, I'm pretty sure this gives you a decent bit of Valor Stones as well as crests in order to be able to upgrade the items that you gain. but I'm not 100% sure on that. It's been a second since we've been able to test this properly over on the PTR. However, every single time you completed a run, at least I did on PTR, I always got veteran track gear that was warbound that I could then send it to my ults later. And it felt like I could just farm that gear as much as possible, which could be an opportunity for you to be able to farm up a bunch of veteran track gear for any fresh new ults you're playing, or potentially if you're just trying to farm up all the different transmogs from this content specifically. In the end, this could be a new opportunity for you to gear out some of your old characters, which is always good to see. Personally, I did comment on the PTR that they should probably increase the rewards for this content, from champion track, which is pretty easy to obtain for most things right now, to hero track, because then there's no way players are going to miss out on this content specifically. I feel like it would just be a very nice catch up ahead of season 3 content. But with that being said, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give it a like. I would very much appreciate it. Also, join our Discord community, especially if you want to keep up with any class changes or patch notes. It looks like we got some 11.2.5 stuff on the horizon sometime soon, which is really unusual. But regardless, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.